Well, good morning, everybody. It's the first time I've ever been called on stage when I was actually in the bathroom. So thanks for that, Jerry. First of all, you are all very welcome to Dublin. In particular, can I welcome Minister or Secretary of State Owen Paterson here to Dublin to speak at this conference. Can I also thank the people who've made this happen. Those in Teagasc and also in Teagasc's counterpart in the UK, and indeed both the British Embassy here in Dublin and the Irish Embassy in London, who have really made a determined effort to bring people together, to challenge people and to look at ways in which together we can be stronger in certain areas related to the food and drinks industry. And I know that the presentations that you've got this morning focus on, or have focused, on the really powerful relationship that is already there between our two countries from a food perspective. In many ways, we have a joint market for food production and consumption. As you've already been told, nearly 4 billion euros of food and drinks are exported out of Ireland into the UK each year. And what a lot of people don't realise, actually, is that just under 3.5 billion euros of food and drinks are exported out of the UK into Ireland each year. That is combined business each week valued at about 140 million euros. And actually, if you look at it from a British exports point of view, which again is often not the focus, particularly here in Ireland, because we see the UK as this exciting and large and priority market for our food and drink. We are the UK's largest, by far, country to which they export. In fact, if you look at the Irish market in terms of numbers, it is bigger than the second and third biggest export markets for the UK combined. That's France and the Netherlands. Undoubtedly, we have a special and significant and valuable relationship from a business point of view in the food and drinks industry. Perhaps we see that in a competitive light at times. But I also now think at this conference what the focus needs to be and what the focus is and will continue to be after this conference, because of the relationship and understanding that I have with Owen, is to focus on areas that we should be cooperating in a more active way on. The reality is that all of our big food companies have a presence in both Ireland and the UK. Whether they're the Greencores, the Glanbias, the Kerry Groups, the Keypacks, the ABPs from an Irish point of view, or whether they're smaller food companies like Glenisks and Glenillans and so on. We treat in many ways the Irish and UK market from an Irish perspective as one market, where you can see a seamless expansion in terms of growth as regards retail sales. As you expand in this small market that we have here in Ireland, we see a seamless expansion into the UK through retailers that operate here and in the UK in a seamless manner, like Tesco and others. And so it's about time we focused in a more strategic way from a policy perspective and indeed from a business demands perspective on what we can do together more efficiently. Last night we had dinner in the ambassador's residence with a lot of the business leaders in this room. And some of them talked about, for example, the problem of finding people with the skill set that they need to expand their businesses. Certain CEOs talked about 50 positions unfilled because they simply can't get people of the skill set that they need in Ireland or the UK. And that was reinforced by other companies. And then on the way out, as I was walking home, I spoke to another Irish business leader who didn't have an opportunity to contribute to that debate, who said that for 3 positions that they advertised recently, they had 125 graduates, all with degrees, some with masters, all applying for those 3 positions within their company's operations in the US. So we have this problem of a shortage in some areas and an oversupply in other areas of skilled, motivated, driven people who are ambitious for their role in the food and drinks industry, and they see it as an international industry. So we need to think about how we solve those problems to ensure that we can match up the available skill set that are coming through Irish and British universities now, and indeed colleges of further education and so on, with the companies that need that skill set. And we need to design the courses to actually fit that demand so that the companies that you are building can rely on a steady supply of highly skilled, motivated, smart people to take your businesses to the next level. And so I think education and skills is a major focus of this innovation conference for Ireland and the UK. Can I just say that it is important, I think, to sort of set the scene as to why we're all here. And I think the first obvious scene setter is that we already have this virtual common food and drinks market where there is extraordinary trade on a weekly basis and movement of people and goods and services and so on. That's a given. People take it for granted. Many of you, see Ireland and the UK as the one in terms of the marketplace that you operate in. But actually in the context of what we, and I say we, Owen and I have been doing over the last 2 days in Dublin, in the context of the reform of the Common Agricultural Policy and indeed the reform of the Common Fisheries Policy, and in the context of global challenges that we face now, that actually are providing global opportunities for Ireland and the UK for growth and expansion, we need to look at how together we can create significant opportunities for our companies to take advantage of those opportunities. And what I'm talking about is the fact that we know that by 2030, that's less than 20 years, we will have to find a way of producing between 40 and 50% more food for this planet, in volume terms alone. We know that by 2030, we will have to find a way of either producing 30% more fresh water than is currently being produced on current consumption patterns, or finding an alternative to that. We know that we're going to have to provide 50% more energy and power globally to meet consumption demands. So we have this extraordinary growth in population, in wealth creation, in developing economies, in urbanization of populations, in a demand for more protein-based diets rather than carbohydrate-based subsistence diets, which has been the case in many developing economies. And we need to find a way of meeting that. And the only way we can meet that is through new ways of doing things, through innovation, through looking at producing more food by using up less resources, by sustainable intensification of the food and drinks industry, and by creating these islands, Ireland and Britain, as the actual heart or the centerpiece for that innovation, and that design, and that ambition, and that technology. Because we already have a fantastic base of companies to do that. And in many cases, they are already doing that. If you look at the commitment, for example, from the Kerry Group to actually build their World Food Innovation Centre now, about 40 minutes from here, just outside Naas. They will do that in the next 18 months. They will employ 1,000 people on an average salary of 80 grand a year, highly skilled, driven food innovators to design consumer products for the next generation, and indeed for this generation, next year and in 5 years' time. That is the kind of investment that we want in Ireland, and in Ireland's interest, we want in the UK also, so that we create this part of the world as a global food innovation centre that attracts postgrads from all over the world, that attracts research funding from our governments into universities that are seen as the top universities in their specialist fields around food and drink in Ireland and in the UK. Because whether we like it or not, and whether we are precious or not about being Irish or being British, and representing an Irish beef industry or a British beef industry, the reality is that the companies that are delivering within those industries are the same companies. And so it makes sense that we would be on the same research programs in terms of delivering for consumers as regards what they want. And so, can I say that the opportunities, because of consumption demand globally, are a reason in themselves for ensuring that we focus on the research and the innovation and the new ways of doing things that all of your companies are already chasing in terms of better practice, more competitiveness, and better efficiencies within your business. And we, as legislators and as policymakers, need to be responding to that by putting a framework in place that allows that work and that investment and that partnership that many of you have with universities and colleges and research institutes like Teagasc and others actually pays real dividends. And that we support and contribute to that financially also in those research programs as we are. From an Irish perspective, there is no doubt about the priority of the food industry in government and in industry here in Ireland. It is our most important business, by far, in terms of the indigenous economy in Ireland and indigenous companies. It's no surprise now that the largest company in the Irish Stock Exchange is a food and drinks company. It's no surprise that I would say 40% of the highest paid CEOs in this country are now working for food companies. It's no surprise that if you look at the number of courses in universities and the numbers of students studying, both men and women, studying agri-food related courses and food science and food innovation related courses have doubled in the last 2 to 3 years. And that's still not enough for many of your companies in terms of the demands that you have for a skill set that is inspired and driven by the exciting growth potential of this sector. The other thing that I would like to say is that I think we've learned a lot of lessons, particularly from my perspective in the last 6 months, on some of the innovation that we need from a government point of view in this sector. I think we need to recognize that even though we have a common market across Europe for food and drink and trade, we cannot have full trust in that market in terms of its integrity. Because there will always be fraudsters and there will always be people trying to find loopholes in the system. And that is what led to the so-called horse meat crisis that many of us have worked so hard to try and overcome in both Ireland and in the UK over the last 6 months. People who are trying to, in a criminal way in some cases, make money out of selling product in a fraudulent way. And this is a European-wide problem. And if we are going to take advantage of a common market of 500 million people, we need to ensure that the markets that we have in our own countries and the consumers that we have are protected and can rely on that common market to deliver for them. And that is why Owen and I have been trying to set the standard and set a benchmark at a European level in terms of the necessary policy response to ensure that this does not happen again. The Irish and British beef industries cannot afford for something like this to happen again. And that is why we will collectively and jointly ensure that the response, the policy response to what has happened, the lessons that we've learned from this, actually influence policy decisions in Ireland and in the UK in a consistent way that maybe should have happened in the past but didn't. And what I mean by that is how we actually mainstream DNA testing now into our processed food systems. In my department, we test about 30,000 food samples each year across all spectrums of the food sector. We are now going to mainstream into that testing system DNA testing of processed products to ensure that we can guarantee the integrity of that product. Not only its food safety, in terms of measuring from everything from chemical content to E. coli to bacteria to disease control and so on, but also that it actually is what it is, or what it is supposed to be in terms of the consumer mind and the label that's on it. So that we can ensure that we don't have a repeat of what happened previously. And I think I have a strong commitment, we have a strong commitment together to ensure that we have a common standard of approach. So that if you run a company in Ireland and the UK, as so many of you do, you can expect the same standards on both sides of the Irish Sea. That is a common sense approach towards a joint industry together. In terms of things like equine identification, horse passports, horse microchips, ensuring that we can guarantee in Ireland and the UK that any meat product that goes through a processing facility is actually fit for human consumption. We've made mistakes in Ireland. We're going to correct them. In the UK, you also have challenges, and you are committed to correcting them. We also need to ensure that things like disease control, things like movement of animals, can happen in a more seamless way than in the past. In this year alone, we have had examples of the need for closer cooperation on, for example, a disease in trees called ash dieback, Cholera. Yet another example of a disease that has spread from Europe into the UK and into Ireland, on the wind, basically. It's a spore-borne disease. And we know that that's coming. And we need a collective response, and we are developing collective responses to that. And we need to do the same in terms of animal disease management and disease control, whether that's TB, whether it's BVD, or any one of many other potential threats to the integrity of the industry that all of us rely on and have built an industry on. And that's what I mean when I say this conference is about more than just innovation within companies or within universities, or creating that triangle that I'm sure Jerry Boyle and others will talk about of academia, of research, and of commercial reality in terms of designing really innovative products and services that can deliver commercially in the marketplace. But we also need innovation on these two islands from a political point of view. And we already have some of that between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland in our cross-border bodies, where we set aside the politics of nationalism and unionism. And we look at practical ways in which we can ensure that we can guarantee the safe and sustainable production of food, north and south. We need to extend that now, east and west also, so that we create a brand on these islands that can be trusted by consumers all over the world. Because let's not forget, from our perspective, we export 90% of everything we produce. So reputation is everything. And there will be plenty of brands and products where we don't want to have a common approach. There are plenty of consumers that want to buy and want to consume British beef. There are plenty of consumers that want to rely on and consume Irish beef. And we have built brands around those products that are strong and need to remain separate and strong. But there are also things that we can do together and should be exploring in a more real way than is currently happening. And that is where I hope we will see a conversation beginning today that can actually lead to real results. A number of people said last night, look, what we don't want is the signing of more memorandums of understanding, of politicians getting their face in the paper along with a few food and drinks business leaders, and then we move on and everybody continues on as normal. I want universities in Ireland challenged today by business leaders in terms of the courses that they're providing. And I want universities challenging business people to help them design those courses. And I want that also being shared in the UK, where there are certain specialist areas that are already there that we don't need to recreate here in Ireland, that we can benefit from the research that's taking place in the UK. And likewise, we have centres of expertise in Ireland that can benefit your industries also. So this is about a collective improvement of the way in which we market and develop food out of these islands. It is in some ways developing new markets together, where the UK has routes to market that perhaps Ireland will never be able to create or recreate. And we can share those routes to market in a sort of a co-opetition environment, whereby even though we have competing companies, it makes sense in some circumstances to work together to make new breakthroughs in new countries and in new continents also, like Africa, for example. I mean, who would have believed it? But after the UK, the biggest market for Irish cheddar cheese is actually Algeria now. I went with Kevin Lane there last year. I got an awful lot of criticism for flying over there on a government plane. But actually, 45 million euros of cheese was sold to Algeria last year. Developing new markets in new countries, in new continents. We are on a path of growth and expansion in Ireland, whether we're with you or not, but we are with you in terms of the relationship with the UK. We have a plan to deliver that. It's called Food Harvest 2020. It was written by the industry, and it is being implemented by the government in terms of policy direction. I chair the implementation group on a monthly basis of the Food Harvest Plan, and if any link in that chain Whether it's farmer, whether it's processor, whether it's transport systems, whether it's opening up new markets, whether it's the research and innovation that is required to go with that, if any one of those links in the chain is getting weak or is at risk of breaking, well then collectively we solve it. So we are determined to build an industry on the back of fantastic companies. And we are determined that the food industry in Ireland will provide the kind of optimism and opportunity that this country badly needs at the moment in terms of economic development, sustainable economic development. And I must say, I think we should be looking to partner the UK on a bigger and more ambitious strategic point of view into the future, both politically and commercially. And I think many of your companies can benefit from that. So I look forward to hearing what many of you had to say. And once again, thank you to everyone who was involved in making this conference happen. Thank you.